Thank you, CFP Board, for inviting me to be here today. I'm very excited to share the research results with you. Just a quick personal note about myself, if I could. I am a long-term researcher as well, and market research is in my blood. I love what I do. But I have to say that if I had conducted this research earlier in my career, based on what I heard from the survey respondents, I would have, especially the survey respondents from women, I would have seriously considered switching professions and becoming a financial planner or CFP. And based on what I heard from the women financial professionals in the survey, I might have considered becoming a woman. But that's a topic for a different conference. Anyway, so I'm going to present to you the highlights from the research that we conducted, my firm and myself, on the CFP Women's Initiative. Now, my job here, and this was a 7-month-long project, so this was a significant piece of research that was conducted over a long period of time and had multiple phases. My job and my firm's job was to do 3 things as a dispassionate, objective, outside observer of what is happening with the CFP marketplace and the financial planning marketplace. And those 3 things were really, A, to gather all the different hypotheses, possible hypotheses, to explain the underrepresentation of women in this profession. B, confirm which of those hypotheses seem to be real and which of those hypotheses seem to be less real or less important. And 3, prioritize those issues into the ones that are most important for people, most important for CFP Board and the CFP community to pursue, and which of those are probably less important and wouldn't have as much impact. So as part of that, we had a range of objectives that we covered in this research, objectives related to how familiar people are with the profession and CFP certification, especially if you're not one already, the image and perception of the profession among both CFP professionals and non-professionals, interest in pursuing the certification among those who don't have it, the perceived strengths of men and women as financial planners, awareness of the underrepresentation of women, so awareness of the general issue and what people consider to be the main reasons for that underrepresentation, and people's suggestions for what could be done to help boost the number of women CFP financial professionals. As I mentioned, this was a multi-phased research. It included both qualitative elements in which we had conversations with people, as well as a quantitative survey. The qualitative elements really were there to help with that kind of hypothesis building process, trying to understand the range of things that could possibly explain this. And that included a number of things. First of all, it's not even on here, but first of all, we did an extensive literature search on the issue to find out what some of the prevailing opinions are when it comes to women as financial professionals. Then we conducted a roundtable in-person discussion with executives at financial services firms who are in charge, who are responsible for recruiting financial planners to see what their perspectives are. We talked to a number of CFP Board registered program directors in CFP Board educational programs to see what their perspectives are on some of the issues related to women in the profession. And we conducted a set of focus groups with women only. 2 of them were with CFP professional women. 2 of them were with financial professional women who are not CFPs. And then we conducted 2 student focus groups, one at Virginia Tech with members of the degree program there, and one at BU with members of the certificate program there. All of that, as I mentioned, was used to develop the hypotheses that we would later test in an online survey among a variety of constituents that included men and women, that included financial professionals, both CFP and non-CFP, that included students, both students in CFP programs and students who are in financial-related programs but not CFP programs. We also interviewed CFP Board-registered program directors and those financial services firm professionals as well. So 1,800, there were thereabouts interviews in total, a large sample of people across a variety of segments. So I'll talk about the key findings, and I should point out that what I'm going to show you here today is the tip of the iceberg. We have a ton of information that we gathered in this process. And what we tried to do is cull together what we saw as the most important findings, the most important story related to this issue. Now, there were many memorable aspects of this project. Probably the least memorable was me sitting over a calculator trying to crunch numbers. But one of the most memorable aspects of the entire research process took place during the focus groups with students, with CFP professionals, and with non-CFP professionals. And one of the most striking things that came out of those focus groups was this, what we're calling an alternate universe, where when we spoke to CFP professional women about their profession, there was an enormous amount of passion and satisfaction and excitement about their job. When we spoke to women in financial services who were not CFPs and not financial planners, there was much less passion. They saw it more as a job as opposed to a career. I mean, it was striking how different those two things were. And I'm going to show you some just brief examples of an image exercise that we conducted during these focus groups. An image exercise where we presented the focus group participants with about 50 or 60 images on paper, and we asked them to pick out the one image that best describes how they feel about their job. And what's really valuable about an exercise like that is that the images not only tell a story, but when they explain why they picked those images, you get a lot of important insight. So I'm going to start by showing you some of the images that were chosen by the non-CFP professionals and what they tended to say about those images. So the images that they tended to choose tended to focus on kind of the logistical aspects of their job. So somebody picked an image of a peach because it represented predictability in her job, because she explained that I know what I'm going to get every time I bite into a peach. Another person picked a canoe that was tipping over because he's tipping over one side and he's not really balancing. And she related that to her own life. I'm not balancing my workload in my life. And then there's that image of, I'm not even sure exactly what it is, but it's overwhelming colors. And somebody actually described that in a positive way, but there were several in the non-CFP focus groups who picked images that represented kind of this overwhelming feeling about what they do. So then we did the same exercise with the CFP professionals, and we had a very different result. We have a potted plant because for that CFP professional, it represented nurturing relationships with people. We had this bookcase that represented this loving of study. The fact is that the ratio of the use of the word love between the CFP professionals and the non-CFP professionals was strikingly different. If you did kind of a word search, you'd find the word love coming up a lot in the CFP professional focus groups. And then planting seeds, growing my own business. Just kind of examples of the types of passionate responses people had and the way that they use those images to express those. Now, one of the interesting aspects of an exercise like this is that it's the same set of images that we use in every study, in every focus group. But sometimes what happens is that people will tend to kind of pick similar images, the same images, but have very different perspectives on them. So if you look at that first image at the top, you've got a bunch of wrecked cars. And a CFP non-CFP, sorry, picked that one to represent her work, and she said it's like work that's in a dead end. You feel you have so much potential, but you can't use it anywhere. That's what she read when talking about her profession. But look at what the CFP professional said about that very same image. These are car wrecks that my clients seem to be. I was resentful at first, don't bring me your shoe boxes. But the feeling that you get when you get everyone satisfied, that brings you a payoff. And then that image at the bottom, which is kind of a toy with lots of different colors, again, a non-CFP picked that and said, currently my job is full of stress and I'm overloaded. I need to make a change. I have way too much. The CFP looked at that very same image, thought that represented her career, and said, there's a lot going on in different directions, but it seems like fun. That's what it is for me. It's always fun to work for clients. So this notion of this kind of alternate universe came through a lot. So in the end, who are the CFP professionals that we spoke to in the focus groups? when you think about all of the things that they discussed in terms of their careers and what's important to them, a couple of things came through loud and clear. They feel at home with their work, energized by it, and they're extremely passionate about what they do. Also, as Nancy alluded to, they like both the right brain and the left brain aspects of what they do. They like the intellectual challenge, but the emotional payoff of helping people. Some come from homes with naturally strong financial planning, and some from homes with no financial skills at all. And that's important because one of the things we're going to be talking about later is this notion of misperceptions about what the career is all about. And a lot of those misperceptions come from people who don't really have a lot of strong background in what financial planning is all about, and they believe strongly in the importance of effective money management. And then finally, when it comes to students, we saw a similar level of passion and excitement. The students, in particular at Virginia Tech, were just overwhelmingly positive and extremely excited about their prospects in this profession. But we see the same sort of dynamic going here. That potted plant, which kind of showed up as a choice in a lot of these sessions, especially among CFPs and students in the programs, the pot represents the roots, the foundation I'm going to get now, but I hope to thrive beyond that in my career. Again, the bookshelf showed up, wealth of knowledge and experience, and that row of houses representing progress. So that image exercise was really helpful for us to kind of see how people feel about their profession, their career, see how it differs between the two populations, the CFP and the non-CFP population. So we used all of that input from the focus groups. We also used all the input from the program directors that we spoke to, many of which focused on things like lack of awareness of the profession among students, as well as misperceptions about the profession among students. We also took the roundtable discussions with the financial services executives who talked about what they see as the challenges for women in the profession, and sometimes not so subtly expressing some of their own biases about women in the profession and what might prevent them from considering women. We took all of that and we created this online survey to confirm and prioritize what we heard in those qualitative phases of the research. One of the things that we confirmed loud and clear, it wasn't just the number of people in the focus groups who were more satisfied and more passionate about their career. In the survey, we found women CFP certificates substantially more satisfied with their career than non-CFPs. In fact, there was a progression between CFP certificates, 72% who said, I'm very satisfied with my career. Financial professionals without CFP, but still who considered themselves a financial planner, were next on the list at 53%. And then the financial professionals without a CFP, but who do not consider themselves a financial planner, were the least satisfied. So a clear progression with CFP professionals right at the top in terms of career satisfaction, strongly confirming what we heard in the focus groups. Also, in this eye chart that you can see here, we asked people in the survey to look at a list of possible descriptions of one's job and ask them which ones best describe your current job. Now, what's really interesting here is that you can see that for CFP certificates on the left-hand side there, they jumped on to terms like highly ethical, people-focused, rewarding, flexible working arrangements, much more so than non-CFPs. In fact, the non-CFPs who consider themselves financial planners tended to focus on numbers-focused as a way of describing their career and stable. And then the people who are not CFP and not a financial planner, don't consider themselves a financial planner, they were much more likely to consider their job stressful. So again, this kind of notion of what the career is all about and what one's own career is all about differs significantly among CFP professionals or non-professionals. So given that we found this one group of CFP professionals who love their job, who are excited about their job, and then there's another group of financial professionals who are not excited at all, it would seem to reason that that latter group would aspire to be more like the former group. But the fact is that not many people who are not CFPs already plan to pursue a financial planning profession in the future. So we asked people how likely you are to become a financial planner at some point over the next few years among people who are not one already. And you can see all the way on the left here, those two left-hand colors are the people who said, I'd be extremely interested in becoming a financial professional or very interested. And they're almost in the single digits for men and women, but women a little bit even less likely than men to say that they'd be interested in becoming a financial planner. So if financial planning is such a great career for women, why aren't they more interested in pursuing it? Well, one major reason is the fact that women are much less likely to be familiar what a financial planner does or what financial planning is even all about. So when we ask people how familiar you are with what a financial planner does, 53% of men who are not financial planners said, I'm very familiar. It was only 22% of women who said, I'm very familiar. So less than half of women, compared to men, feel that they have a strong understanding of what a financial planner does. Also, you would stand to reason, given what we found in the focus groups, that men and women who are not CFPs would be interested in pursuing it, understanding how satisfied CFPs are. But again, we see a huge disconnect between men and women in terms of their interest in becoming a CFP. In particular, 39% of men saying that in the next several years, I plan to become, or at least pursue, CFP certification. It's only 23% of women. So another big gender gap in terms of their interest in becoming a CFP professional. Now, what are some of the main reasons that people said that they would not pursue a CFP certification? The reasons tended to be pretty similar for men and women. So a lot of it focused on time commitment and expense. But there were a couple of differences between men and women where men were more likely to say, I don't want to pursue a CFP certification because it would take out time from my career, take out time from building my career, whereas women tended to be more likely to focus on the expense of becoming a CFP professional. So somewhat different reasons for not pursuing the CFP certification in particular. And then, in spite of those reasons, we also found a huge familiarity gap in CFP certification between men and women. So when we ask people how much they know about CFP certification among those who do not have one currently, once again, we find a major difference between men and women. 48% of men say that they know a lot about the CFP certification. Once again, it's about half of women who feel that they're that familiar with it. So women just not as familiar. In addition, men much more likely to be familiar with every kind of specific aspect of becoming a CFP professional than women. So we ask people, how familiar are you with the things like the ethical standard requirements to become a CFP, with the continuing education requirements, with the educational requirements, the exam requirements. The left two bars represent professionals without CFP certification, men versus women. The right two bars represent students who are not in CFP programs, men versus women. You can see dramatic differences in understanding of what it takes, what you need, what the process is to become a CFP professional. About half of women, once again, feel that they're familiar with that than men. So you might ask, and it seems like a silly question, but why is familiarity important? Why is it so important to make sure that women have a strong understanding of what it is to become a financial planner? Well, I'm going to focus on the right-hand side because the right-hand side bar represents women, and the bars themselves, the numbers themselves, represent the percentage of women who say that they are extremely very or somewhat interested in becoming a financial planner. Among those who are not very or not at all familiar with financial planning, only 22% say that they'd be interested in becoming a financial planner. As you go to being somewhat familiar, it jumps up to 40%. But if you are very familiar, if you're at that highest level of familiarity, you've got a majority of women saying they're interested in the profession. All of that, it seems to go without saying, but it just underscores the notion that one of the key requirements for encouraging more women to join this profession is just getting it on the radar for them, is just making sure they understand that it's out there as a possibility and making sure they understand what this profession is all about. So now we'll talk about perceptions about the profession. So one of the things that we uncovered in this research was enormous amount of misperception about what financial planners do among people who are not financial planners or CFPs. for these charts, we have divided the population, the survey population, into two groups. CFP professional community includes CFP professionals and includes program directors in CFP, educational programs, and it also includes students themselves in CFP programs. The financial professional community includes professionals who are not CFPs as well as students who are not in a CFP program. So you get the CFP community and the non-CFP community side by side. So we asked people to tell us, for each of the following statements about financial planning profession, how much they associate each of those things as something that's needed as a financial professional. Once again, major differences. For the CFP professional community, they focus on things like Nancy talked about in terms of holistic relationship building, communication with people. So it requires strong communication skills. It requires strong listening skills. I'm being close to unanimous agreement with those things. Requires one to look at a client situation holistically. Requires that financial planners requires skills that financial planners can use themselves in their own lives. And is primarily about building long-term relationships with clients. What is the one thing that the financial professional community, the non-CFP community, most associates with being a financial planner? It's requiring a strong understanding of financial markets, much more so than the CFP professionals do. So outside of the community, they think it's about understanding investments in financial markets. Continuing on with this chart, we also see that women who are outside of the financial community, the CFP community, also strongly agree that being a financial professional requires strong sales skills. And in fact, that came up again and again in the research in terms of women outside of the community feeling that commission-based sales is a very important part of becoming a financial planner. Not nearly as much among the people who know the CFP community itself. And in addition, down at the bottom there, it's not a huge percentage, but it's 9 times higher than CFP professionals believe, and they believe outside of the community that it's primarily about finding the right stocks and bond investments. So there's a strong misperception about what being a financial planner is all about among people who are not CFPs. And again, what's the impact of that? Why is that important? Well, we did an analysis here, and we looked at, again, the percentage of women who have an interest in becoming a financial planner, and we looked at that based on their perception of what financial planning is all about. So on the left-hand side, if you are a woman outside of the CFP community who feels that sales skills is a strong part of being a financial planner, only 33% of you want to become a financial planner. But if you are neutral about that, if you feel kind of mixed about that and don't have a strong feeling about the importance of sales, it goes up to 45%. So that perception of sales driving what financial planners do is a major barrier for people pursuing the profession. On the flip side, if you strongly believe that being a financial planner is about building relationships with clients, 45% of them are interested in becoming a financial planner. But if you are less likely to believe in that notion of building relationships, your interest level drops off. So the more you can make people understand, get people to understand what financial planning really is about and isn't about, the more likely you are to attract women to the profession. So number 2 prong after building awareness is addressing these misperceptions in the marketplace. Now, we also, that came up again in a question in which we asked people to tell us what they thought would be some of the most important things that could be done to encourage women to become financial professionals. And what's interesting here is that the number 1 recommendation among CFP women professionals was if the financial planning profession were seen as more about planning and relationship building and less about financial products. That was what they considered to be the most important thing you can do. Address those 2 things. Address the lack of awareness, address the misperceptions in the marketplace. That's one of the things that will get women more interested in this profession. That came up again and again in this study in both the qualitative and the quantitative aspects of the research. So now let's talk a little bit about perceptions of men and women in the profession. So we asked a question about which gender is more likely to have the skills and characteristics to be a successful financial planner. Now, with one exception, most people said there's really no difference between the genders. They both are equally adept at becoming a financial planner. However, women CFP professionals strongly feel that women are more likely to have the characteristics than men. 46% of them said women. Another 50% of them said no difference. But almost half of the women CFP financial professionals felt that women have an advantage in terms of the types of skills, temperament, characteristics that would make them a successful financial planner. Having said that, almost everyone agrees that women do not have an advantage in being hired as a financial planner. So we asked people, who's most likely to be hired as a financial planner in a financial services firm? Men, women, or no difference. So single digits of all groups, including CFP professional women, felt that women were more likely to be hired than men. Significant percentages felt that there was no difference, but most people felt that, if anything, on balance, men were much more likely to be hired than women. So even among CFP professional women, 49% said men, only 9% said women, when you take out the people who said no difference. And it's pretty much the same across the board, this perception that men are more likely to be hired. Now, one of the most interesting things that we found in this study is that segment of financial service professionals, the people in charge of recruiting and hiring financial planners. So we asked a head-to-head question of those people. We said, who's more likely to have the characteristics of a successful financial planner? Basically the question I just showed you. And when we asked them head-to-head, these people in charge of hiring, 41% said men are more likely to become a successful financial planner, only 7% said women, and 51% said there's no difference. However, in another question, we asked about the characteristics of men and women separately. So we asked some people, how would you agree that women are, highly ethical in what they do? Would you agree that women have an advantage when it comes to dealing with women clients? And we asked another group of people about men. And what we found was that in spite of their strong preference in that head-to-head question for men, in almost every case, financial services executives were more likely to agree that women have those characteristics than men. So 89% of financial service firm executives felt that women have the characteristics for a successful financial planner. When we asked it about men, 73% said it. 82% said women have an advantage in attracting women clients. Only 61% said the same about men. 94% said women receive adequate training. 73% said men receive adequate training, and 88% said women are strongly ethical in their dealings with financial planning clients. Only 67% said that about men. So obviously a double standard here. You've got financial service executives saying, we strongly prefer men, or we think that they'd make stronger financial planners, but when you ask them individually, separate it out, they're actually more likely to agree that women have those characteristics than men do. Now, continuing on with this double standard idea, we presented people with a range of different scenarios and asked them, again, to tell us how they feel about how firms deal with men and with women. So, for example, we asked people how much you agree that firms are reluctant to hire men because they're concerned about that they'll leave and start a family. And then we asked the same question about women. How concerned are you that firms are reluctant to hire women because they'll start a family? And what we see is that when it comes to those items, those characteristics, when it comes to women, there's much more evidence of gender bias for four in particular, actually. So 37% of all of our respondents in the survey said firms are reluctant to hire women because they're concerned that they'll start a family. Only 16% said firms are, yes?
Isn't it true that the men are the ones primarily who are doing the hiring?
In fact, we have, I don't know the overall statistics of that, but we had men and women in our survey who are responsible for hiring. So we have the ability to say, you know, what did men feel about this and what did women feel about this?
In many instances, men will feel threatened by women.
Yes, yep. I don't have the data on that, but it sounds right. But you know, fascinating examples here. So again, this is among everybody. Many strong role models for men in financial planning, 66% say yes. Many strong role models for women in financial planning, only 46% say yes. Office culture in firms make men feel welcome and respected, 58% absolutely. Office culture makes women feel welcome and respected, only 37% agree with that. And then men receive strong support from their colleagues in a firm, 53% absolutely, 39% say the same thing about women. So there's this gap when it comes to how welcoming firms are when it comes to men versus women that at least our participants saw. And those gaps are even stronger when you look at just CFP women professionals and how they felt about that. So you can see the numbers on the right, the gap numbers are much higher than they were for the overall survey population. So the same kind of issues. So women, there are many strong role models for men. 81% of CFP women believe that's true. Only 32% of CFP women feel that's true for women, that there are strong women role models, and down the line. So all of those things, all of those kind of notions about how welcoming or unwelcoming firms are when it comes to men and women came through loud and clear, at least according to these participants. Now, we also wanted to understand, just in general, how aware people are in our survey of the fact that women are underrepresented in this field. And 51% of respondents said, yes, they're aware that there are fewer women financial planners. 31% said they're not exactly sure, but they assumed that that was the case, and 18% said they didn't know. Now, what's interesting here is that awareness, as you might expect, is higher in the CFP community. So CFP professionals themselves are more aware of this issue than non-CFP professionals. And financial services executives, interestingly enough, are also more aware, as you might expect, that women are underrepresented. Why? Why are women underrepresented? We conducted a trade-off exercise in this survey to try to understand what the most important reasons are for the underrepresentation, at least according to respondents. And one of the things that we found when you look again at everybody that we surveyed, the top reasons had to do with firms themselves and firms not being welcoming or doing enough to attract women. So financial firms aren't committed at the highest levels was the most important perceived reason among everybody. There aren't enough strong role models for women in the financial planning field. Financial firms aren't open to offering women flexible arrangements. So office culture in financial firms doesn't make women financial planners feel welcome. Those tended to be the top reasons among everyone. What was interesting here was those reasons came up as important as well among CFP women professionals, but CFP women professionals added another wrinkle here, and they, in fact, cited as their number one reason the fact that women aren't strongly advocating for themselves in the profession. So they themselves feel that women need to be stronger advocates for themselves in this profession to become financial professionals and CFPs. So basically what it comes down to is we have another set of reasons here. One is this kind of double standard, this lack of welcoming environment among firms. And then for at least CFP professional women, there's yet another reason, and that is that women don't do enough to advocate for themselves in the profession. We're pretty open and honest about saying a lot of it's our fault. You know, we're not offering this sort of open and welcoming environment for women. So what are the things, at the end of the survey we asked people, what would be the things that would do the most to encourage more women to become a financial professional? What are the strategies? And what they came up with, I mean, actually these were things that we presented to them and they either agreed or disagreed with them, but the things that they focused on were the things that we've talked about. Greater awareness of the profession, addressing the misperceptions about the profession that exist among non-CFP professionals, making firms more open, making sure encouraging firms are more open, more willing to accept women and create a more welcoming environment for them. Those were the top things. So market financial planning as a career well suited for women. We've talked about that. Develop mentoring programs. Introduce financial planning earlier in the educational process for students. Present financial planning as about planning and relationships as opposed to about selling, investments, and mathematics. And what was interesting when we asked that, when we looked at that question by CFP women in particular, their number one suggestion, as we looked at earlier, was to position financial planning as a profession that's about building and nurturing relationships with people. That, they think, would make the biggest difference, among other things, but that in particular they underscored as especially important for encouraging more women in the profession. So just briefly, I mean, the key takeaways that came through for us, and one of them was this kind of notion of alternate universes, this contextual dilemma. We've got a population of women in a profession who love what they do, and then we've got a population of women not in the profession who don't love what they do and don't have any idea that there's this alternative for them that could cause them to love what they do. The missed opportunities and root causes. So what are the things that people pointed to as some of the things that were the most important when it comes to the underrepresentation, explaining the underrepresentation of women? It's awareness, it's positioning, and it's an environment in financial firms that's unwelcoming to women. In terms of the certification benefits in particular, one of the things that I didn't show you here was that there's a difference between CFP professionals and non-professionals, non-CFPs, when it comes to what they see as the value of CFP certification. CFP professional women felt that a CFP certification makes them more knowledgeable, makes them a better financial planner. Non-CFP professionals think a CFP certification gives them a credential that doesn't really make them necessarily a better financial planner, but helps attract more clients. So that was a really interesting difference that came through in both the quantitative and the qualitative, is that value of the certification was really seen as inherently important and a benefit for CFP professionals. But for everybody outside the community, it was just, I don't really need it, but if I have it, I'll probably get more clients and they'll be more impressed with me. The role played by firms, men are perceived to be much more likely to be hired than women in spite of the acknowledged strengths of women that we just saw in that previous chart. When it comes to offering a supportive environment, whether it's real or perceived, there are people who just feel that financial firms are not welcoming enough to women, and that in itself has a two-pronged effect. One, it could mean, to the extent that it's real, that financial firms are just less open to hiring women. And two, it means that women are less likely to pursue because they're afraid that there's going to be less opportunity for them to join a financial firm. And then solutions that are offered here really, again, not to beat Mr. Ed too much here to death, but it's really about building awareness, positioning the profession in the way it needs to be positioned, encouraging firms to be more welcoming to women, and then finally, especially among the professionals themselves, doing whatever is possible to encourage women to be stronger advocates for themselves in their profession. And as I mentioned, those were the highlights from the research. Again, this is about a third of the full report and about 1/100th of the reams of data we have from this study. So thank you, Peter.
Peter's report is available on the CFP board website, cfp.net/win. So the white paper that you have in front of you, Peter's report, and there'll be a number of other tools and resources there as well. We have time for a few questions before we take a break this morning. And I see hands going up. We have people with microphones in the back. So if you'll raise your hand, Peter will be available. First question down front here, please.
First of all, I just want to say thank you. That was a wonderful presentation and looks like a great report.
My pleasure.
I'm just wondering how you reconcile the high degree of satisfaction on the part of CFP women with this environment that appears to be unwelcoming and discouraging.
Well, I mean, again, I think the environment, I think the unwelcoming environment stems from, I think, longstanding gender biases in the marketplace, where some of the things that came up as barriers still exist, like not, this kind of men's club notion in a financial firm, this notion that women are going to leave and start a family, and the fact that it's kind of a vicious cycle because, with so many men as part of their profession, it's kind of almost naturally become a profession that encourages men or that caters to men's needs in the profession. So, I think there's a lot of things that go into it, but I think a lot of it's just longstanding bias. In fact, when we did the focus groups, it was really interesting with the financial service executives. One of the things we asked at the end of the focus group was, what do you think are the things that could help encourage more women to become financial planners in firms like yours? And we had them break up into groups, and they put down their suggestions, and one of them jokingly said, let's put more hair dryers in the bathrooms. And he was making a joke, but it just underscored what that kind of mentality is about women in the profession. Yep.
Next question right down here.
Okay, how do we reconcile the fact that companies who hire us encourage more commissions as opposed to fee for services? And the other thing is some people I work with see the need for having a lawyer, having a doctor, having a CFP, but they don't see financial planning as a necessity.
Financial planning as a necessity for themselves or just?
For themselves.
Okay.
Why don't I take that one, and
Okay.
then I'll let you answer the question,
Okay.
the first question.
Okay.
So we're working very hard at CFP Board to tell the story and increase the awareness of the value of financial planning, as well as awareness of CFP certification through a national public awareness campaign. So that's one of the objectives. Ray talked about 4 long-term goals. So that's one of the objectives that we have at CFP Board. And I'll let you take the other question.
In terms of commissions, I mean, we did find that the notion of commission-based selling was something that was a perceived barrier. So especially among non-CFPs or non-financial professionals, there's an assumption that a big part of what a financial planner does is sell investments and be compensated on the basis of commissions. And when you look at the relationships statistically between people who feel that way and interest in the profession, they're much less likely to be interested if they believe that a lot of what I'm going to do is sell, and a lot of my income is going to be based on commission.
One more question. We're going to take 2 more questions, and then we'll take a break. Eddie will have one down here. I want to let you know that Peter will be back up here after Marilyn and Eleanor share the results of the findings and our recommendations. Peter will be on the panel, so we'll take a question there, and I think we have one more back here, and then we'll break for tea.
You mentioned that one of the concerns was that women will leave and start a family, but has that been tested for CFPs or financial advisors to how many of them are leaving the business to start a family? Because just anecdotally, if you look around, most women are either, who are CFPs, are oftentimes the primary breadwinner, or I know lots of them that have 2, 3, 4 children. So I'm just wondering, if this has been tested yet.
Yeah, maybe somebody else can answer that. I don't have those statistics. We did ask people how long they've been a CFP or if they've left and come back, and there didn't seem to be a huge difference in terms of men versus women when it comes to that, but that's a statistic that is probably out there, but I just don't have that, unfortunately.
Thank you, and then we had one more question
Do you have the
right
answer?
here, I think.
Go
Last
ahead.
question before break.
Kevin?
Yep.
I think you might respond.
I'm an independent. I was hired in 1986 to be a financial consultant in Merrill Lynch. And what this young lady brought up at the beginning is very true. 1986 Merrill Lynch, that's the way it was. But in the independent network, women are very welcomed. And as far as working at home, although I have an office in Princeton, New Jersey, I spend my mornings at home. Everything is worldwide, internet, wireless. So this career is great. Men are also taking care of kids these days, as we all are aware, okay? So this industry, especially the independent that I've been with for 20 years now, and not to push who I am, but just the independent network in general, very welcoming to women and men and women who want to work out of the home.
Great.
Although I recommend you have an office to meet your clients at.
Thank you. Last question here.
I was very intrigued with the study, and I would be interested if you have enough juice to continue it to bifurcate the commission industry and the fee-only industry. I see them as equally disparate, not a like analogy, but between the non-CFPs and the CFPs. And I think that it doesn't surprise me that if you're hiring financial service company professionals, they would favor males as more energetic and, selling the products. We all know that it's proven that women gestate the relationship a long time. The woman client will require the gestation of a long period of time, and many men won't have the patience or understanding for that. And they'll move on, which is fine because there's room in this industry for all of us. Right. Yet the mission to invite women to understand the relationship aspect, I think, can be fostered with fee only in a huge way. Mm-hmm. And it was child labor, but I've been in this business 36 years. And I custody with TD, and I would never custody with anybody but TD, so that's a plug for TD. They are fantastic for women. Yet I think that the fee-only status in this profession will represent the Eleanor Blaney's, the people like us that have been around a long time. And that will take us out of the commission. I've got to make 6 sales this week, else I'm not going to meet my quota.
Absolutely. I think that makes perfect sense, and it's absolutely consistent with what we found here in terms of this notion of nurturing relationships and how important that is in the financial planning profession, and how well suited women are for that sort of role playing when it comes to financial planning.
And as much as we value your comments, I would just mention that CFP Board is revenue neutral, compensation method neutral, and make that point. I think with that, we'll break for coffee and tea.
Thank you.